Thanks for tuning in to Hardly So. I am Wes.
And I'm Carl.
And we want to welcome you to Season 2.
So Season 2, look forward to it.
Kicking it off now. And we kind of switched it up, a little bit different format, but still going to give you great content and great conversation. So we want to jump into a pressing matter. Everyone's discussing it. And we don't want to give you the same thing you get everywhere else. So we want to come, as you know, we always real, honest, and candid. But I think we discuss things in a slightly different way. So we want to discuss the murder of George Floyd, which happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I think that to start it off, right, we actually wanted to launch Season 2 a few weeks ago.
Several weeks ago.
And I said once this happened, we had to get this done. We had to, get into the studio. But we know about the murder that happened of Ahmaud Arbery. And then very shortly following that, there was the incident with Christian Cooper in Central Park. And so, racial tension has escalated the pandemic, has escalated just, 2020 has been crazy. Kobe's died. You couldn't write, if a movie came out with everything that happened in 2020, no one would believe it. It would be definitely a science fiction movie. No one could write this. So, but I want to jump into a discussion just kind of about race relations. And I know people are going to be discussing this on other platforms, other shows, other podcasts. But I think that the way we're going to go about it presents a little differently. So if I can just kind of give me 5 minutes. So I want to spill kind of my thoughts. So these officers are arresting George Floyd for a supposed or alleged forgery. And I'm not here to discuss whether or not he did it, whether or not he committed the crime that they think. I don't think that that's relevant. I don't think that that's ever relevant in these situations. And the reason I don't think that is I've seen known murderers. I saw Dylan Roof walked out in a bulletproof vest from the church where he murdered 9 people.
And taking the Burger King.
I've seen this too many times. I've seen videos on the internet where officers are trying to arrest or detain a white man with a weapon, and they've shouted, freeze, and they've said stop. They've said put the knife down, put the gun down 20 and 30 times. So someone is dangerous, you don't fear. You don't think you need to use escalating force. You don't have to use lethal force. So whether or not they did it doesn't matter. Whether or not he actually was a forger, because that's a whole separate part of the discussion that I don't think needs to be had. That, well, if he did it, then you still shouldn't be using this type of force to bring people in. Not to mention that at least the point at which I start watching the video, he's already down on the ground, and this persists. And this might be unpopular, and I have a lot of friends who are police officers, frat brothers, sorors. I just think it's some of the most punkinest police officers I've ever seen that end up in these situations. And I think we need to stop this nepotism that happens, because I think police, fire, medical, certain professions, there should be no nepotism, no favors, no walks through the back door. You have to be special for this. And I'm watching this cop with his knee on this man's neck. I understand situation can get out of control. You don't know how to unfold, and you want to be cautious and be sure that you have this person secured, detained. But when two other cops are standing there with their hands in their pockets, it would seem that there isn't much danger. So you could let up. When the man is saying, I can't breathe, you could let up, handcuff him, pull him up, put him in the back seat. It's these situations where they just continue on and they progress, and it's the police who progress it that I think start to wear on people. And so we fast forward to, because I think most people are kind of on that same page. Most reasonable thinkers are on the page of, it was unnecessary, it was too much, it's the latest in a long line of police encounters that are more violent than they need to be, whether they are initially lethal or not. So let's move past that. The man later dies in police custody. And now the past few days have been protests and riots. My blanket or initial, I guess, thought is, I don't think that it is anyone's place other than black people to tell black people how to act right now. That's the first thing. So I feel like if you are not black, if you don't understand, you do not have an opinion that matters at this point. Secondly, if you are black and you say anything other than don't burn or loot or destroy black property, don't burn or loot or destroy black businesses, don't hurt black people, then I think you do the cause a disservice. I'm careful with my words because I'm not saying to do that to non-black property or non-black people. But I would not tell you not to act in a certain way when I understand. And this is why I say, if you aren't black, you shouldn't be casting an opinion, because you should just be supporting your black friends. And I refrain from putting this on Facebook or social media, and I saw some other people posting similar things. Like, a lot of my white friends have been oddly quiet the last couple weeks, and I haven't seen them say anything up until the riots and the looting starts. And the issue I have is there was nothing to be said during these police encounters, but now you have opinions when we act out. So when we marched, you didn't listen. When we prayed and we kneeled, Colin Kaepernick gave up his career, there was nobody to listen. It seems that acting a fool is the only thing that gets people's attention. And the reason I'm saying don't tell people not to act the way that they think they need to act to be heard. Because if they're willing to go to that measure and they're doing it for your good, black people, you should just shut up. It's my opinion. I also think it is dangerous for, again, white people should not be commenting on this, but I think it's dangerous to also be that black person that says, what about black on black crime? I had somebody say they didn't use the term black on black crime. They said, we're worried because a white man killed a black man, but we don't say anything these other times a year when it's summer and we killing each other. And I commented, I respect the fact that you did not use the term black on black crime, comma, but this is coon talk. And it felt good to say that. I had been hitting a point, and this is why I'm telling you, I wanted to bare my soul. So those of you who know me personally know I have business aspirations, and I want all of that to happen, but I can't play corporate and not be who I am. And if you coon, I'm going to call you a coon because that is my truth, and you are hurting us. When you say stuff like that, you help reinforce the notion that, one, black on black crime is real and it's not a matter of proximity. I explained, I don't kill, the chances of me killing someone in Granger are less than me killing someone in South Bend because that's where I live. So when you say things like that, you help reinforce that narrative that we are inherently more dangerous, or that it happens more proportionately in our communities, which it does not. Secondly, I find it curious that people only want to bring up, quote, black on black crime when there has been an instance of police brutality or a George Zimmerman situation, something that we're pointing to as injustice. That's the time that people want to discuss black on black crime. They don't ever want to discuss black on black crime, and I'm doing air quotes, when black on black crime happens. So when we have these shootings, that's not the time when we have neighborhood shootings, rather, that's not the time to discuss black on black crime. It's when this officer has killed an unarmed, usually innocent black man or black woman, black child. That's when that's when people feel we need to discuss black on black crime. That's coonery. And that's ridiculous. And I'm really just tired of it. I want people to start telling the truth and tell it when it's necessary. So, don't use that as a time to divert the attention and take the conversation in a whole nother direction. Right now we need to discuss this officer and his encounter. And when the next quote unquote black on black crime happens, I'd be happy to discuss it. But don't bring it up now. Now is the time to discuss George Floyd.
So, for the listeners that don't know us personally, Wes is African American and I am not. But many times, culture doesn't have a color. I never knew so many white people existed until I got to college. I never knew that white privilege was a thing up until about 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm 44 years old. And since I realized what that privilege looked like, it has been my goal to figure out how I could use my white privilege to impact the communities that I care about. Okay. Also, I'm the father to 2 African American sons. And every time one of these incidents happen, I put myself as a father in this scenario. My oldest son got pulled over in Texas the other night, and he was just glad to have his white friend with him because he wasn't sure how that traffic pullover would go, because the police officer said he was driving too slow at night on the freeway and that his license plate light was out. And every time one of these incidents happened, I put myself as a father into the situation, and I get angry. And I know my anger, and I know I need to control it, and I know that I want to make sure that I channel it the right way. And I do support protest. I do support community activism. And, I saw a T-shirt at the protest the other day that I really liked. And it said that Black Lives Matter more than white feelings. Check your privilege. Because each time, we're talking about this killing in Minneapolis but it comes on the heels of the Central Park 911 phone call about a man harassing her, and she acted out for that 911 operator.
Yes.
It comes on the heels of just a week and a half of multiple calls in multiple situations with a crescendo of Minneapolis. And the battle cry of enough is enough. What do we do after the protest? How do we have this impactful change after the protest so I don't have to worry about either one of my kids getting pulled over, or each one of my youngest sons goes for a walk every day because he's not in school and has nothing to do because of the virus. He goes for a walk, and I'm concerned each time he leaves the house to go for a simple walk in the neighborhood. Not because I feel like someone's going to shoot him who looks like him. Not because I feel like he's going to get beat up for his $3 or $4 in his pocket. I'm nervous because he walked down the street in some jeans and a wife beater, what the police may think. And I shouldn't have to tell him how he should dress or how he should comb his hair so that he doesn't, quote unquote, look the part. So this is why I get emotional about these things. And my concern is that our current national leadership has emboldened the already existing racism that's there, has emboldened them to act out any way they want to. And when you referred to Kaepernick to take that when he took the knee, he sacrificed his career, and this officer put his knee, and then they react about how African Americans are reacting about that knee. And don't protest like this, don't protest like that, don't do this, don't do that. What is the right way to address it? Because taking knees got attention, but there was still no change. Rioting and protesting is getting attention, but where is the change? And it is only going to change when the people whose skin that looks like mine can accept that the privilege that they have is not equal across the board. And until that happens, there's going to continue to be these executions of black men. There's going to continue to be privileged white people calling frivolous 911 calls on people who are doing nothing wrong. Working out in the gym, jogging, sitting down in a rec room, falling asleep on a couch. All of these things that are going on are not issues that need to exist in a 911 phone call. And I I listened to a video that said if you call 911 on people for doing normal things, mind your business. It's a simple thing. Mind your business. You know, I participated in one of the rallies here in South Bend, and it was so refreshing to see white people, black people, Asians, Latinos, men, women, elderly, young, kids, everybody from every walk of life, poor, wealthy. But my concern is that collective group in each of these cities enough to impact the change, because the people who pull the purse strings and the people who use their privilege along with their money aren't looking at these protests as a way to that they're not scared. What are we going to do? What can we do to finally put some sort of spur or fear into the group of people who are doing these things? This is one of the first times, though, that I have seen even law enforcement step across that thin blue line and talk about how off base the officer was in Minneapolis. And that usually doesn't happen. One of the things that concerns me is what happens because this officer was charged with third-degree murder. Why not first degree? Why not have you not arrested the other three officers that were just as bad for allowing it to happen, why haven't we arrested them? Why haven't they been charged? Excuse me. Why hasn't the person that sat there and recorded, as opposed to calling out for help, not been addressed? It was very refreshing to see that for the young man, Aubrey, that was jogging, that the person who videotaped it has also been arrested. Because your inaction is just as bad as the actions. Your silence is agreement. You trying to find a way to sugarcoat it is complacency, and complacency is just as guilty as you doing it. This is not a time to be complacent. This is not a time to sit back and say someone else will take care of it. Each and every individual plays a role in this change. And if you do nothing, it means that you're okay with it. If you say nothing, it means that you're okay with it. And so your silence is agreement. And that's my opinion.
I definitely agree. And I think, and thank you for your comments. I obviously I kind of knew where you stood, at least in general. And but as I said, we hadn't discussed this really, and opinions vary even amongst friends, even amongst skin folk and kinfolk, and it's just that if something keeps smacking you in the face, and I often say, let me phrase it this way, so we'll discuss something different, right? The pandemic has us in shambles as a country. You currently have people who don't work pulling in more money than people who are closest to the virus. And do you know why that is? Why, in comparison, other countries have been able to deal with it better? I have a cousin overseas. They literally shut the country down. Like, if y'all think it's shut down now, they basically militarized and occupied the streets and said, you will not walk outside your door. They were able to do that, though, because they have measures in place that allow for that. If we did that, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of families would starve, literally starve. And the stuff you see in movies where they had to draw lots to see who's going to get eaten first would happen because people don't have food for a week. America has raped and pillaged its people, starting with slaves, or really starting with the Native Americans, and then on to African slaves. And at every turn where America has the chance to do the right thing and divert their course, they choose not to. So, they're throwing these stimulus bills together and different things. It's not an argument about how it should have been done. It's the fact that everyone knew that what was being done wasn't exactly right. It wasn't going to work. But as politics goes, it's got to be what's agreed upon. So we won't do that, but we'll do this. And, it's quid pro quo, a little give, a little take. Because now they're going, back in for more stimulus. Let's figure it out. When people don't say or do something to interfere, to help, you are complacent and you are complicit, in fact, that, we wouldn't watch some of the things happen that we watch and have a clear conscience. Like this is movie stuff. I mean, you can't imagine that within a week you have multiple people killed in the same fashion, in the same manner where it's always the same story. An unarmed black man, even when it's an armed black man, he's licensed, he didn't draw, he's following the police's orders.
It's almost like it's scripted. It's like this is planned. And I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but I will tell you that with all of the uprising, this is an opportunity for 45 to declare martial law. And we know that's the ultimate power trip that he'd want to do anyway. And I know we don't usually get too political on this show, but in your home, your family's actions start with the leadership in the home. At work, the success of your company starts with the leadership. In organizations, the leadership dictates the success. It's the same thing with our country. Our leadership is not there. Our leadership is, in fact, gassing many of these situations up. I mean, for him to say when the looting starts, the shooting starts, that's giving the ones who support him, who he's empowered, to start shooting. That's giving them a license to act out because they're following that leadership. And you have to be careful how you word things when you're in positions of power. At work, I have a staff of about 35 people. And there's sometimes things I want to say that I can't say, and I have to figure out how I'm going to say it so that they don't react a certain way, so that we're still successful when we move further and forward. And our leadership has failed at that. This has been the strangest almost 6 months from January to now that I have ever seen in my life. From the pandemic to the murder hornets to a week full of outright attack on African Americans by people who took an oath, swore to an oath to serve and protect.
And that's it, just real quick. That's the biggest point, I think, is when people. I already said I have a problem with black on black crime, but for the sake of discussion, I'm going to use that term. When that happens, and two gangsters in the hood are shooting and one kills the other, he goes to prison, and he gets the higher end sentences. He goes to the worst prisons. He goes to when that and it's swift. When we have officers or we have these vigilantes in some of these cases that they're the neighborhood watch, self-appointed, they seem to not have to, suffer those same consequences. And the key point is they swore an oath to protect. I'm paying for you to kill me and harass me. That's the part I don't get. So now if I'm calling that out and I'm using my voice, I'm voting, you see, because I have voted in every election I was able to. I barely missed the 2008 election a couple months. I vote in primaries. So I get to say whatever I want to say. Now, And I feel like you should still have a voice even if you didn't vote, but I think you still need to start voting. So I don't silence people who didn't vote because you maybe didn't know. It's clear many people didn't know how important it is. But to say that, I shouldn't say anything else, I shouldn't be saying the type of things. This is me, and this is art. And I hope that people in my business dealings understand that this is my art, this is my outlet. But at the same time, I'm gonna be the same person across the board, and I'm just gonna be genuine. And for me to be genuine, when you are wrong, I'm gonna tell you you're wrong, and I want people to tell me when I'm wrong. Now, at least as it concerns this, we were joking, in kind of our setup or production, setup meeting. What was the question you said? Like, what if are we going to disagree? Or is this going to get hostile or something to that effect?
Right.
Because again, we did not, discuss it. And I said in jest, well, only if you're wrong,
mm-hmm.
because I knew there's no way I'm wrong about this. One, I'm black. I have been black every day of my life. And I'm dark skinned. So I've experienced all the racism, even from my own people. I have many great friends who are not black, that I think have been a huge support, that I think have done the right things, said the right things, taken the right steps. And I have some who I'm questioning. I have, my wife and I have some friends who 2016 election, cycle, we I don't know if fell out was the appropriate term, but we weren't as close as we used to be. And I don't have an issue with people having a difference of political opinion. So full disclosure, you consider yourself a Democrat.
Right.
You are registered. I consider myself an independent. I have voted for 2 Republicans in my life. This is across all offices, not president, but I'm saying every office. 2 ever, maybe 3. I think 3. But I don't consider myself a Democrat. I have a lot of problems with the Democrat, but I have a whole lot more problems with the Republican Party. And, I just think that at a certain point, we have to be genuine, honest people. So to feel like we need to align ourselves with a party that, for me, isn't genuine. Now, for other people, I let them live their truth. But I know the Democrats be lying. I know the Republicans be lying. And I respect them each for different reasons, and I detest them each for different reasons. But, like I said, we kind of fell out with these friends, and I think Trump Republicans are different, though. If you had said you voted for George Bush, I would get it. I guess my point is, I understand you have to do what's best for you, your family, your community, from your purview. I don't think there's anyone who could really explain to me, save a few of my more well-to-do friends, right, why they would vote for Trump. I understood it. I didn't like it. But it was about money. It was about, I think he's going to do things that are going to benefit my bottom line. I get it. I feel a way about it, but I get it. But when the person who makes less than me, was supporting Trump, I was baffled. I'm like, how are you fooled? So, I literally I'm starting to get off topic. So, I just want people to, I want to, I'm not going to say the name, but a friend of mine posted this, white gentleman. He said, white people, we can't tell black people how they should respond to years and years of mistreatment by us. And he capitalized us. # Black Lives Matter. I think that was poignant because, as you pointed out, so often when stuff like this happens or when white privilege is discussed, white people deflect with statements like, I grew up poor. I don't have, what privilege do I have over you? You make more money than me. My dad left me too. I was on food stamps. I was on unemployment. They run the whole gamut. And I said, I simply tell them, you're caught up, unfortunately, in a system designed for me. See, when you go fishing, and if you ever been fishing with a net, you may be going for crab, but there are going to be some other, sea life in there. Or, you don't only catch crab. There's other fish or different things, game that you would catch. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, you just caught up in a system that's designed to trap us.
Now, I'm going to disagree with that. I'm going to disagree because, and we don't do this a whole lot, but when white people say that, it is a cop out, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I grew up very, very poor, and I'm not too far from there now. But what I can say is this: the opportunity for upward mobility is there if you want it when you look like me. And it comes easier when you learn to work within that network. The opportunity, so they're not caught up. They're not aware of their white privilege. They don't have to worry about when they walk into Walmart that the police are watching or security is watching. It doesn't even occur to them that driving home with one headlight could lead to getting shot. It doesn't occur to them that could happen. That, in essence, is white privilege. So they're not caught up in a system that's not designed for them. They're looking for some commonality because they're embarrassed by white privilege. And so so I disagree with that. The opportunity, we look at African American communities, neighborhoods, the infrastructure is not there, the education is not there. That is the system that's designed. And you can look at some poor white people, and both that same poor white person and that same poor black person with that same credit score could go for a loan or go for a job or go to buy a car, and they're going to get treated completely different. So that is the privilege. So it's the opportunity to be able to get out of that situation that exists that doesn't necessarily exist in African American communities.
Right, and because you don't face those barriers,
Mm-hmm.
you don't think they're there, because you just see the front-facing part of it. You don't know, even though we have historical data and all that, but like you don't know individually that we had the same credit score, we went to the same bank, we make the same amount, and my interest rate was 0.25 higher than yours for no explainable reason. You don't see it, so you don't know, you don't acknowledge it. It becomes easy to get lost in that and have that attitude that, oh, well, I'm not experiencing white privilege, or you're not experiencing any disadvantage compared to me individually, but the system is what it is. And oftentimes it's people who haven't. So I kind of agree with your point that you said you would kind of disagree. It's people who haven't encountered the system, because when we have these encounters, then we clearly see it. When you see, so now, funny enough, there was the Somali officer, same police department, Minneapolis PD, who shot the white woman a couple years ago, 12 and a half years. I'm interested to see how they're going to treat this, because it's essentially the same thing. And I know the autopsy it's saying that it's not directly a cause of him, having his neck sat on for 5 minutes.
8 minutes, 47 seconds.
But, I'm interested to see that. So it's when we encounter the system and we have these, housing programs, we have the schools, and we have the community investment. And of course, when we kind of encounter the criminal justice system, where we see the glaring differences. But I like how he put it, where he said us, and he acknowledged it, and he capitalized it to emphasize, I didn't do it, but I benefit from it. And that is what America is. America hopes and wishes and presents itself to be the greatest country, a hodgepodge, of different ethnic groups and cultures. And when it is beautiful. When you have these peaceful moments that you don't have to think about these type of things, it is to be able to experience different cultures around the corner. They don't have that in other countries, because everyone there is essentially native, the great majority. The majority of people in America are not Native Americans. So we end up with this melting pot. But because of white supremacy, we don't get to see it in all its glory.
So as we get ready to wrap up this episode, again, we're going to post this episode uncut, unedited, full emotion, no music, no frills. But we would be remiss to put this out there without a call to action. And Wes, I'm going to ask you, for everybody that listens to this, what is your specific call to action for the people that are listening to this?
I'm glad you asked it that way specifically, because I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna say this frankly. I don't know, which I think is a lot of Black America. We don't know, and this is why I say, don't tell them not to riot and loot. I don't know that that's wrong, and I don't know that that's right. And I don't have the solution. I'm not a political strategist. I'm not a community activist. I think we should defer to those. Again, we had that person, and they shot him in a hotel, outside his hotel room. We've had Black leaders that could galvanize and organize us. And every time that happens, they are assassinated. They face some sort of scandal. They have to be dethroned. So we don't have a unifying voice at this time. There's several, people that we could point to, scholars, but I think it just becomes difficult to know who to listen to because we have to find a flaw in someone rather than just doing the thing that we know is the most right. So what I would say is, Black people, I think you need to do your best to refrain from initiating violence. I think you need to do your best to continue to have productive dialogue. And I think that those who are not Black need to support those that you care about who are Black in the way that they tell you they need support. Trust them that they know the experience better than you do. So don't think you know better and that you can say, well, you'll be fine. You went to this college and you have this job and it's not going to affect you as long as you comply with the officers and you all of these types. Just don't do that. Just whatever they say, you say that. And let your eyes be the judge. Jane Elliott did several experiments and several teachings, but one that was most notable was when she was teaching a group of students and she said, I want every white student to stand up if you would like to be treated the way that Black people in this country are treated. And of course we know crickets, right? No one stands. She says, I don't think you heard me. I want every white person to stand up if, the way that Blacks are treated, that you would be fine being treated that way. She says, so the fact that you don't stand tells me that you know what's going on. You see what's going on. So the question is, why are you doing nothing about it? If you don't know what to do, ask one of us. I will tell you.
And I'm going to give, I know we hate to put timestamps on our podcast because we like them to be good listening whenever somebody listens to it. But I'm sorry, I want to have to put something on here. On Tuesday in Indiana, June 2nd, you have the opportunity to fire back with several punches by going to the polls and voting. I know they said mail them in. I don't trust it. I
barely trust going to the polls.
I don't trust the absentee process. I don't trust early voting. I want to go. I want to clock my vote. I want to sign in. And I'm upset that I don't get a paper ballot to put in a box, that it's got to be digital. That concerns me. But I will say I'll be at one of the polling stations in South Bend, Indiana, June 2nd at 6 a.m. to make sure I get there early because I want to be the first one to touch the screen. and don't have to worry about sanitation. But I will say that if you don't go to the polls and vote, you're missing an opportunity to start a different process, a different leadership group, a different local prosecutor, different local officials who in turn can change who the police chief is, can change who the other people who are part of the system are. And I'm gonna tell you, Killer Mike had one of the most impactful speeches I've listened to. He don't know what to say. He don't know what to do. He didn't know what the right answer was, kind of like you. But he did say, we've got to come up with a plan. And don't burn down your own home. You need that home so you can plot and strategize and mobilize to the next step. And that's all I got to say.
All right, this has been Hardly So. We will see you all on the next time.
All right.